Welcome, one and all, to the Coffee with Friends podcast, episode number 3. And as you could probably tell, there's something new going on. We are trying video format.
How would they be able to tell?
Well, you're watching it
I guess,
on YouTube
yeah,
or on Spotify, where you can also watch video format via podcast. So that's dope. So, well, this is obviously all theoretical if this works. You may just be hearing the podcast without video because it didn't work. Who knows? But we are here with episode 3. I want to go ahead and start off with, what are we drinking? What are we drinking today?
This is an abuelita chocolate. So I guess it's an abuelita mocha latte.
Okay, there we go.
Yours
you guys
has
can
caramel.
Yes.
Mine does not.
Yes, I tasted it as I was stirring it.
Whole milk only.
All right, so there you guys see, obviously, with seeing that we have the coffee in front of us, coffee with friends, that's the point. So we're going to try to have some coffee while we do this now.
That's true.
Anyway, thank y'all for stopping by, for all the love and support as always. We are on episode 3, which is crazy to me. You know, going hard with trying to drop an episode a week.
Hooray with consistency.
Yeah, let's hope we continue that trend. But want to just thank you guys for stopping by and listening, whether you're on your way to work, whether you're on your way on your run, just chilling at home, on your bed, on your couch, whatever. Just want to thank y'all for taking the time to listen to the podcast. I want to just go right into it. The reason being, I think today's topic is going to be pretty hefty. We are going to be talking today about, we're going to start talking about the questions that we have been receiving at community nights. These past 2 episodes have been a lot more kind of like overall vision, kind of 300-foot view type of like what we're doing, why we're doing this. But we want to really start jumping into answering questions that the community has. Yeah. And going into detail and sharing our story, sharing our thoughts, and of course bringing people into that. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and start that. Today we'll be talking about...
before we do start,
go ahead.
I did want to give like a slight trigger warning for miscarriage and suicidal ideation.
Yes.
So if those are things that trigger you or make you uncomfortable or bring something up, I just want to be sure that this remains a safe place for you. So if you don't listen to this because of those things, that's okay. We want you to feel as safe as possible in this space and know that we love you and we're still praying for you. And we hope to see you the following week, or I guess I hope you listen to us the following week. Yeah. But I did want to kind of put that out there. Yeah. So that there's no surprises.
Yeah, and thank you for doing that because, I mean, we're going to start going into some pretty heavy subjects in these next couple of podcasts because, again, we're answering the community's questions. Yeah. And I'm so thankful that they are heavy questions because that means that people feel safe enough to ask them. Yeah. But, yes, we do want to – I love that you did that. Do you want to just preface that, moving on? Because today we'll be talking about lamenting and mourning the death of a dream, or just the waiting in the waiting.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is something that we talked about this past community night. If you were there, this will be just a bit of a refresher. And if you weren't, this hopefully should be new to you, or should be just helpful and of value. But we're going to be talking about that. So we'll be talking about that, what it is, what it means. And then we're going to be talking a little bit about how like we have been navigating through that in our own lives. Xiomi kind of prefaced it right now in the trigger warning, but how that's been a thing in our lives and how we've tried to move forward. So just for clarity's sake, what is lament? What is the process of lamenting in the Bible? Essentially, lamenting is a common theme in the Bible. It is defined as expressing grief, sorrow, or deep regret. It can be done through actions or words. It is a form of prayer that involves talking to God about pain. We see this a lot in the Psalms. We see this a lot in just a lot of the people in the Bible that were going through trying to complete the promise that God gave them. People struggling with, again, the waiting period. Yeah. So many people. But this is a very common, very big theme in the Bible, and that's what we talked about on Thursday, and we brought up different Psalms, specifically Psalm 88, which I'm not going to read the entirety of it, but it's one of the most kind of like depressing and heavy Psalms. It talks about, God, why have you forsaken me? Why have you turned your face from me? Why are you allowing my enemies to beat me, to have victory over me? It's a very dark Psalm, and a lot of the Psalms are like that. But I want to kind of preface before we keep going on. I think what's really cool about us talking about that was actually the day before, and I kind of mentioned this at Community Night as well. Xiomi and I went to good old Pluckers for Wednesday trivia night. If you don't go. It's fun.
We don't even play.
We don't even play. We
play
on our own.
with ourselves.
Yeah.
But like
we don't like actually
not the
participate.
big game. Yeah.
And I was talking to her. I was like, hey, like, I had something planned for Community Night, but I don't really know if that's the move anymore. Mm-hmm. I'm struggling to figure out like what it is. Mm-hmm. And we were talking, and in those conversations, like Xiomi brought up, hey, like, talk about like the Psalms and, the lamenting of that, and like the wrestling with God about, dreams, and the waiting season. And I was like, I think you're onto something, because I was thinking about doing something like that. And it was just kind of like this thing where we were just like affirming this kind of like things that we were thinking, and we were just like, oh, wow, this is great. So this is where this came from. It was a last minute shift that we did.
And mind you, this was while like all these like rock classics were playing in the background. I'm just saying, God can talk to you anyway.
Yes, He can.
I'm saying He could talk to at the
feel
Pluckers.
I feel the Lord
at 10
in this
p.m.
Chili's.
I feel the Lord in this Chili's.
But no, so yeah, and I'll kind of share how I think it was another like job well done. Like God was like, this is dope, because there was a lot of really cool confirmation and affirmation after the fact. But so we shifted gears there, and we talked about the Psalms, and essentially, again, just to keep it short, I don't want to like explain what we talked about, but essentially we just talked about like lamenting and the power of one, making your laments known to God as the psalmist did. So writing them down, talking in prayer, just like letting God know, not because He doesn't know, but because there's power in your confession of it, because He knows that already. Yeah. But there's something special about you confessing it, writing it down, saying, this is where I'm at. I know you know, but I want to show you that I know too. This is where I'm at. Yeah. And then, of course, sharing that in community. And then I talked a little bit about, story in Mark about the friend being dropped from the roof, the paralytic, and how, of course, he was healed by his friend's faith, not his own. And how it shows the beautiful power of like, we may not have enough faith for ourselves, but we have faith for others. And if you're in a room, in a place, or surrounded by people who have enough faith for you, God can move with that. Yeah. And then essentially, just tying it all down to like, hey, we're going to share our laments. Like we're going to write them down. We're going to be honest with God, with each other. And then what we ended up doing is they were all anonymous. We wrote them all down. And then we basically shared them with one another. And we just prayed. We prayed for each other's laments. Yeah. And believed for them and prayed for them as we would have wanted someone to pray for us. And it was a really powerful moment of just standing in the breach, and, the power of intercession and all that stuff. It all ties back to what we were talking about a couple weeks ago. But it was just a beautiful moment. So lamenting, we're going to talk about that in a different level. Again, I just kind of give a quick little crash course about it. I can share notes and stuff later.
Because I wasn't here.
Yes, you weren't here, actually.
So
there's a lot more we can go into detail, but I don't want to do that. I want to really focus in on some stuff here at the end. But again, a cool part about the confirmation that we really were like, wow, God really wanted us to talk about this, was because the day after that, I had someone who was at Community Night send me this text message, and basically was like, hey, like, he sent me this really long paragraph. I was like, oh, this is really cool. And then I was like, what is this? And he was like, this is actually the devotional from the Bible app today. So that was Friday, because we have Community Night Thursday. Mm-hmm. He was like, and it was really interesting that devotional on Friday, that day, the day after Community Night, was about laments and lamenting. Like, that was like, wow. Like, I don't believe in coincidences. Again, like, that was in my eyes. I was like, wow, like, that's just confirmation. Like, God listens, but he talks to us right when we need to hear what he wants to say. Like, he always comes on time. It's always just like timely. It's just super encouraging. But he shared something that I want to share with you guys. So shout out to Judah. If you're listening to this, you probably are. I want to shout you out, and I want everyone to know that this bar came from you, bro.
Yeah.
So he texted me this. He said, at community night, as we were praying, the Lord gave me something. I just wanted to share it. I didn't know when to share it. I wanted to just text you. And he said, this is what he got. How can I drown in tears when my Savior walks on water? When he said that, I was like, yo.
I think we ran around their living room for a little bit.
Yeah, we were like,
just
that.
Had like this. That was
fire.
Such a bar.
That was fire. It was
good.
So good. And I love, so again, one, thank you for sharing that, because that's awesome. And that's the whole point of community night.
Yeah.
Is, that we share what God is speaking.
Yeah.
But also just what an encouragement, because that, like, we were just like, we got to put that on a shirt. Like, we got to put that in a song or something.
Yeah,
it was just so good. Yeah. So good. But anyway, I say all that to say, I just wanted to very quickly give some context for what we're about to talk about. What we're going to be talking about for the rest of this podcast is honestly our relationship with Lament, what we've learned, what we're learning, what we struggle with, and hopefully what can maybe help you in your journey, because we all have a journey of lament. Like we're all lamenting or mourning something. That's just life. So that's what we're going to be going into for the rest of this podcast.
Yeah, we can only hope that like our story can help you move forward or help you learn something. We have no means we have any answers. Like we don't have any answers. Yeah. Like we don't have any true like step-by-step guide on how to, get through whatever. All we can be is just a living testimony of like what God has done in our lives and like what he is doing and how we're struggling. Like you said it great. Yeah.
Yeah. So, again, lamenting, it's a process. It's a very self-aware process. Like you have to be very honest with yourself. Mm-hmm. You have to be brutally honest. And again, like in the Psalms, in specifically Psalm 88 that we talked about, like the psalmist was extremely brutally honest of where he was at. Like he put everything out on. He didn't put his heart on his sleeve. He put it on the floor. Like straight was like, this is where I am at. Mm-hmm. So the first step is just being aware. And acknowledging it and being okay with it. Like it's okay. That was a big part of our conversation. Was like it's okay to be in lament. Like it's okay to be angry. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay to doubt. Again, the mourning of a dream, like that was one of the questions that started this, right? Answering that question from community night, like how do you deal with mourning a dream in the waiting season? Like that's just a tough thing that we all go through. And it's hard to quantify and qualify what it looks like, how long, it's so hard. And I'm gonna be honest, I'm gonna be just very brutally honest, is what we do here. I don't know about you, but for me, one of the biggest things that really like just grinds my gears, like it's just it makes me, it does something in me, is when I share something I'm going through and they're just like, oh, okay, it's all good, God's gonna take care of it, like it's gonna be fine. It's like, I know that, I don't want to hear that though. Like I just feel like sometimes that can be the cop-out answer. It's very similar to saying, oh, I'll pray for you. And
I understand, like it's uncomfortable. Like, I understand that sometimes hard topics and hard conversations, or just like listening to somebody hurt and ache and be in this spot of, I don't know, like I understand that it is uncomfortable. And I acknowledge that. And I acknowledge that sometimes that answer is because like they don't know what else to say, It's like, what do you do or what do you say when there's no like true answer? There's no true solution, Like, I'm sorry, like, and it was part of my journey, as like we talk about it more, like it's something I learned just last year. And I do realize that it is uncomfortable sometimes, and that's like it's a cop-out answer, but I think it's also like I don't know what to say.
And that's the thing too, again, like we don't want to put blanket statements either, like sometimes that's just all we have, but I think that a big issue of mine with again, like the church and our community, all of us, Big C Church, Christians, believers, like, I think that we need to understand how to be more empathetic and, like, how to actually navigate those questions in a way that's human, filled with empathy. And it's, like, not just okay, I just want to say this and then be over with it. Like,
Yeah, for sure.
to really be like, insert yourself
For
into
sure.
that, you know. And that's again why what we did at community night was that it was
Yeah.
like, we're not just gonna be like, oh, okay, we're gonna pray for you and believe. Like, no, like, bring me into that
Yeah.
pain. Like,
Yeah.
like, okay, like, let's talk through this. Like, let's not just, yes, we'll pray, yes, we'll regurgitate the truths that we know, yes, but there's more than that.
Yeah, for sure.
Lamenting in community, like, that's where the power of a lot of that healing
Yeah,
comes.
for sure.
It's you tell people how you feel, yes, you tell them your issue, but then, like, you insert yourself and say, okay, yes, but, like, I'm here with you, like, I'm gonna go into that trench
Yeah.
with you. And I think that's a lot of that.
And to be fair, a lot of the, like, you know, but God is still good. Like, a lot of that comes from, most of the time, like, from what I notice, or from when I've, like, tried to, like, you know, figure out, is, like, most of those answers come from people that I don't have a lot of relational equity with. It comes from
True.
people that I don't really have a relationship with. So, like, obviously they're not thinking, most people don't think that way. Most people don't.
Yeah, it's true.
There are a few that do, though. I mean, there are a few people I like to tell myself I am one of those people that if you just start talking to me and just unloading, like,
Yeah.
I'm here, you know, and I want to
Yeah.
be there to listen and be that place, but also that's not,
Yeah.
it's not everyone.
Yeah.
And I know there are other people that are like that. I'm not saying that nobody's like that, but I do realize that most of the answers that come with, like, oh, but, you know, God's got you, it comes from people that I don't really hold too much
Yeah.
relational equity with. And yeah, and then I think from, like, these community nights comes the, hey, bring me into that,
Yeah.
because you're building this relationship.
Yeah, and you're practicing it.
Yeah, for
Because
sure.
I think it really comes down to, like, we just don't practice it enough.
Yeah.
I don't think we practice,
For sure.
again, going back to, like, episode 1 and 2, like, the whole, like, doing life, all that stuff, like, what that really means, what that
Yeah.
really entails. Like, we don't really practice that. I think we say it a lot, but, like, part of, again, what we were talking about in community night about lamenting, it's the faith of your lips and the faith of your heart. Like,
Yeah.
you can believe, because we talked about that other verse. I don't want to miss that one. I don't know if I was confusing that one with the other Mark verse, but there was another verse about the man with his son, the demon-possessed son.
Oh, yeah.
That's really
Yeah.
You brought that one up, and that really gave me that idea when we talked about it that Wednesday. But the whole, like, I believe, but help me with my unbelief.
Yeah.
That beautiful,
Yeah.
like, paradoxal, like,
Yeah.
oxymorical, very, like, what is it, like, this, like, it's how do you have belief and unbelief at the same
Yeah,
time?
and it was more like both things can be true.
At the same time,
You can have faith,
Yes.
and you can still
yeah,
doubt.
because Jesus still did it, but again, like, the Father was like, I believe, but help me with my unbelief. And again,
Right.
that goes back to the self-awareness.
Right.
You have to be self-aware. Like, he knew that he believed in in the rabbi and Jesus. Like, he knew him,
Yeah.
and he knew that he could do it with his lips, with his heart. He was like, that's where my unbelief is, though.
Yeah.
So it's, again, it's a beautiful, the self-awareness, being there at the same time. So, you know, yeah. So anyway, all those things.
Or you could have the faith in your heart and the doubt in your mind.
Correct.
Which I think is typically what happens, is that, like, you have this faith in your heart and your soul, but, like, your mind just does not.
Yeah.
It does not allow that. Just can't compute it, you know, it can't understand it. And I think, like, that's a lot of doubt comes from, like, the overthought.
Yeah. Yeah, so, you know, again, like, we say all this to say, like, it is a difficult thing within the community of believers, of the church, and just humans, just humanity. Like, we struggle. We tend to want to do a quick answer or try to give the right answer out of, like, the desire to help, but, like, sometimes we don't know the answer. I think it all comes down to being with people in the trenches. Like, you have to go where they are at, and you have to, you know, not suffer with them, you know, like, don't. It's not like you're throwing yourself like, oh,
You're not taking their loads on.
It's not your job. Like, our job is not to take their loads. It's not to carry their weight.
Yeah.
But it's to walk with them in that. So that being said, we're going to do that with you guys right now. And we're going to bring y'all into how this is real to us.
Sure.
And in that, hope that you feel that, like, okay, like, I can share these things with people as well. I can bring people in. You know, again, with the lamenting and the waiting on a dream, this whole past year, I think you've kind of, like, talked about, I think you talked about it a little bit in, like, I don't know if it was last week's podcast or the one before, but, you know, like, how last year was really tough.
Right. Yeah, I did mention that, like, we just have had a tough year.
Yeah.
But I didn't really get into, like, what it was or, like, the details of
Yeah.
what that looked like.
Yeah, I mean, so essentially, again, bringing you guys into where we are in our walk with lamenting and trying to believe and hold
Sure.
our faith and be
Yeah.
steadfast is, like this last year, some of you know, some of you may not know, but we had a miscarriage. And that was a very, I mean, there's just so much you can say, honestly, all I can say is like, I did not expect it.
Yeah.
Would have never thought that would be me.
Yeah.
Would have never thought I would go through that. Like, it was such a shock. I was like, whoa. I mean, it's just, there's so much. I mean, we're still like processing it almost a year later, but like, it's one of those things where it's like, wow, like it's hard to explain.
Yeah.
But that was a hit that took us by surprise, like just took us by surprise. And it was, I think, the hardest thing, obviously, we've ever gone through together. But I would go as far to say, and I will speak for you on this one because I think it's true. I think it's the hardest thing we've ever gone through individually.
Yeah.
And we've gone through some things individually.
Yeah.
But I think that's been the hardest
Yeah.
thing we've ever gone through. Our story with mental health and suicide and all those things. Yes, that's tough. But it was nowhere near what we went through.
Yeah.
And mourning a dream and
Yeah.
mourning our child, and that was a tough season, and we're still navigating it. Like, it's we're not on the other end of it yet. We're still believing, we're still dreaming, again, like the waiting season.
Yeah.
But we've gone through a lot of just situations throughout that time. We've learned a lot of things about ourselves, about each other individually,
Yeah.
about God and how he works and stuff. But anyway, I'm gonna kind of let you speak on that a little bit, but because I'm good with words,
Yeah.
but with my emotions, I'm really not. And I'm actually kind of struggling right now to find the right words to explain
Yeah.
where I'm at or how I feel.
Well, I think like I also think like we don't talk about it a lot.
That's true.
Actually,
It's true.
I can count the times we've talked about it. I think like when it happened, the due date, we had like a conversation kind of about it. Mother's Day,
Mm-hmm.
were like
definitely.
the only times we really like intentionally had a conversation about this.
Mm-hmm.
I think other times have been like either because I was like spiraling,
Yeah.
like, but like not sat at a table or like
Mm-hmm.
had like a true intentional conversation about it and just like talked through it. We may have done it like another
Yeah.
time, but it's not very often that we do.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's just hard.
Yeah.
And we both process so different. It's like so wildly different. And I'm good with emotions, okay with words, but not as good as you are with words. I don't feel. At least you communicate better. I just like ramble and I'm not as sophisticated or proper. I feel like you're really proper. Like you know how to like word things well. I don't know. I'm also like trying not to cry, so like I'm trying to make some kind of humor happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think by far one of the most difficult things that happened, that is still happening, and I'm still like figuring out how to like navigate waiting, because I'm not good at waiting, but I feel like my whole life I just wait. And maybe that's you too, but like I feel like I've just had to wait so long for so many things. Like I feel blessed that I'm married, but I got married later than most people in my group got married. Like if you're looking at like the age, I'm the oldest one of us that got married. All of my friends have kids or had kid or is about to have a baby. And so I'm learning to navigate that because I am still the oldest one in the group who does not have a baby.
Yeah.
And I think like I love watching my friends' families grow. I think it's so beautiful. And I love meeting them and walking through the process, but I would be a liar to say that, like, I don't feel sad.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, I would be lying if I didn't say, like, I was angry. Not because, like, they're having babies, but because, like, where's mine? And, you know, it's hard because through this process, like, I am angry with God, but I love serving God. Like, I feel upset, but, like, it has not kept me from doing what I know He wants me to do. And I'll do it full-heartedly, and I'll do it with all of, like, everything I got. But it's hard.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, this isn't fair. That, like, I've never complained about serving you and the gifts that you gave me. But, like, hello?
Yeah.
And, like, I don't know how to, like, perfectly navigate that. I just know that, like, I have to be faithful with what I have. And He'll do the rest. And not just because that's, like, the right thing to say,
Yeah.
you know? But because that's, like, what I really feel in my heart. And, like, that's what I really believe. Like, it is not... I don't... Like, I know that, like, if we had a baby, community night and coffee with friends would not be the reality of what it is. It is not... I know that if we had a baby, this would not be what it is.
Yeah.
We would not have what we have. And I'm thankful for what we have.
Yeah.
And, you know, man, there are days I call my sister and I'm like, it's just never going to happen. And there are days I, like, make offhanded comments to Sam and I'm be like, well, it's just never going to be me. And he's like, no, like, whatever. And, I mean, I will text my sister and I'll be like, it's just never going to happen. And, you know, I'm never going to have one. And, or, like, my mom, or, like, I just, like, sometimes it feels hopeless.
Yeah.
Sometimes it feels lonely. Well, it feels really lonely. But my sister and my mom and, like, my friends, you know, like, they're like, it's going to happen. And I'm like, I don't know. And they're like, well, we're going to believe for you.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, like, also, like, part of, like, why I felt like the conversation we had at Pluckers about it. And, like, the friend being brought down from the roof of the...
Yeah.
I think about that a lot.
Yeah.
Because I have a lot of people on my corner who
Yeah.
are like that. Who are like, well, that's too bad because I'm going to keep believing for you. And I want to keep praying for you even if you don't feel like it. Even if you're not there right now, like, I'm still doing it.
Yeah.
And that has been a big part of why I've even been able to, like, keep going. Because if I didn't have, like, Linda and Michelle and Kaylee and Peyton and all these people in my side, and my mom and, like, my sister-in-law, like, if I didn't have these people on my side, like, I don't know. I really don't know. And it was in this process of, like, when people found out, they were like, oh, I'm so sorry, but God, you know, it's a hard thing to, like, what do you say to that? I'm sorry. And I'm like, you don't say sorry, like, it's not your fault. And so, like, I feel like a lot of my life has been waiting. But in that waiting, I've learned so much. I've gained a lot of wisdom. I've gained a lot of friendships and relationships. And it's strengthened my faith. And, you know, there has been a lot of anger and frustration.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, even just waiting for Sam to finally propose was a testing of my faith. Like, it was a lot. I never thought, I didn't even think I would ever be married. Because I was like, how old was I? 27? 27, 20, about to be 28 or just turned 28 when I got married. And like, you know, all my friends got married younger.
Yeah.
So I just thought it wasn't going to happen. But through that period, like I just knew one thing. I knew a few things. I knew I had to be faithful because I wanted to be. I learned that like it doesn't matter what happens. Like I'm just like God made me to be with him. And sometimes it's hard. But I knew that.
Yeah.
And if all else failed, I was with God. And maybe a little sad, maybe a little angry, but I still had that.
Yeah.
And I mean, it doesn't mean that I'm never upset.
Yeah.
So I'm upset pretty often, but you know, and even with trying.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's like its own world. Like it's so complicated. It feels like a lot of work. You know, like tracking and dates and times and this and your temperature and like, man, like it's a different world that I didn't ever think I would ever have to be a part of.
Yeah.
And, you know, for those of you who are in the same space, like if you're trying and you can't, if, you know, you've miscarried a baby, like, I don't know. It gets better a little bit at a time. And patience sucks. But God hasn't left you. He might be a little quiet. And get around some good people. I think, like, that's my biggest advice to people who are maybe mourning a dream. It's get around a good community who will be those friends, who will lower you down through the roof. Get around some of those people. Find those people. Because you're going to need those people on some really tough days.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, I don't know if you wanted.
Yeah, I mean, I love that you shared that, and thank you for sharing that, because I know it's not easy, and you may be listening to this and being like, man, I wasn't prepared for all that. Well, again, sorry, that's who we are. We preface this in our first episode, and we preface this community nights, coffee and friends. Like we don't shy away from that.
Yeah.
Like this isn't weird or foreign to us. But I don't want to undermine the fact that like that's hard. So thank you for sharing that, because I think, as you were talking, everything that you're saying in my head, I'm like, well, someone just, you listening to this, like insert yourself in there. Again, and maybe it could be as practical and as similar as that,
Sure.
as, trying to become pregnant and have a child. Yes. But like, forget that, like insert your issue, your dream, whatever it is, whether it's a relationship, a job, a career, family stuff, whatever. But like everything that you said, that's I think the universal like formula, the universal like how we feel, like the track of how people feel, like everything that you were saying and your struggles and your thoughts, like we all feel that at a level, whether it's just like that or a little bit less. Whether it's, again, dealing with a miscarriage or dealing with a friend or a relationship or whatever, like we all deal with that at an elemental, foundational, like molecular level.
Yeah.
So I just want you, like, as you heard Xiomi share that, like, insert yourself, and you probably did. You probably were like, man, like, yeah, I feel that. That's exactly where I'm at. Maybe it's not the same thing, but that's exactly how I feel. Like, the waiting and the questions and the anger and like the why and like the feeling of like, I love the way you articulated it, because again, it's the raw, authentic reaction. And I think that's what we are all looking for, because we all do it. And what you expect is, it's tough, but God is good. Like, yes, we know that.
Yeah.
But that's not it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Like, that's not it.
Mm.
Going through something like that,
Yeah.
I've had to realize that too.
Yeah.
I used to be very much so like, get over yourself. Like, I used to be very much like, get over it. Like, you don't,
Yes.
like, it's not that deep. Like,
Yes, it
if
was.
God is so good, like, man, let me tell you, God humbled me very quickly when we went through that situation. I realized very quickly how ignorant and insensitive that is to think that way. So if you feel that way, check yourself. One, two, because I'm gonna be honest, because that was me. But two, it's like, again, you don't understand until you go through something, and we're all going through something. Like,
Yeah.
we're all going through. Again, it doesn't matter how big or small that it is,
Yeah.
but at the molecular level, we all
Yeah.
feel the same, and we all react the same
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, and I hope you're not listening to this and listening to me talk about this and be like, man, like, I'm not going through anything if she don't do that either. Like,
Yeah. Don't try to
don't
measure up.
diminish your issues because like this seems to be like a bigger issue.
Yeah.
Because there's no gauge to who's probably like this isn't that this is not
No, I mean, the
whose issues
comparison,
are bigger,
yeah.
you know. This is
Yeah.
like what you feel is so real to you.
Yeah.
And let it be real to you. And don't be like, oh, just because I can't even say anything because they're going through something much deeper. Don't do that. Like,
Yeah.
don't diminish yourself and your feelings and your issues because you know what? There's always going to be a bigger issue somewhere in the
yeah.
world. And at the end of the day, like, this is real to you.
Yeah, I mean, at the
And
end of the
this
day, the
is
comparison.
affecting
Yeah.
you. And it's yours. And it matters just as much.
Yeah.
It matters just as much. Size, it's not quantitative. It's not size does not matter. It doesn't matter how much of it is. Like, it is still so very real, and it matters so much still to God, and He still cares so much for all of those things.
Yeah.
So don't. I hope you're not sitting there and thinking like, oh, man, like, if she went through that, and I'm barely like, I'm just struggling because like I can't figure out like if I should still be friends or not with this. It's all the same.
Yeah.
This is still real to you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this
The
is still
comparison.
affecting your heart.
The comparison part. I love you brought that up because that's so real. We all do it. You know, comparison is the thief of joy. We've all heard that.
Yeah.
But you know, it's much more than that. Like the comparing. We look at comparison from like a work standpoint.
Yeah.
But like the comparison from pain standpoint,
Yeah.
I think it's much worse because then, yeah, it's like you were saying, it's the moment you try to look at, you know, are your problems even that big? Is it even worth asking God? Like, because then you
Yeah.
start questioning whether your dreams matter,
Yeah.
whether your pain matters, whether your struggle matters. And the fact is, it does. And I love that. Something that you said when you were sharing, you know, part of that with your process and journey with everything, you know, it was like the being like just being with God and just being like, all right, this is where I'm at. And it's like at the end of the day, like that's actually what God wants. Like,
Yeah.
He wants to be there
Yeah.
in that with you. Like, I look at Adam and Eve, you know, when they walked with God in the cool of the day, right? And they just, I mean, it's such an incredible image of just communion with
Yeah.
our Creator. And I'm like, you know, at the end of the day, like the whole story of the Bible and Jesus is to redeem what happened and so that we can live what should have been, which is that communion with God. And at the end of the day, that's what it is. It's
Yeah.
the good stuff and the bad stuff. Like the celebrating, the mourning, that's what God wants to be in and walk with you.
Yeah.
You know, he wants to be invited into your pain.
Yeah.
Because God won't insert Himself into your situation like that.
Yeah. For sure.
Not because He can't. He can do whatever He wants. But because He's a good Father
Yeah.
and He's a God that is gracious, merciful, and loving,
Yeah.
He's waiting for you to say, come into this area with me and walk it out.
Yeah.
And I think, again, like, this whole situation of laments and, you know, dealing with waiting and... I'm gonna be honest. Another thing that's really hard too is I'm speaking from my experiences. I grew up my whole life having people always be like, "Oh, there's this promise on your life. There's this promise on your life. There's God this, God this, God that, God that," and I'm just like, awesome. And I grew up thinking all these things and being, okay, well, okay, this is this promise. And if months, years would go by and that thing didn't happen, I would be like, whoa, what happened?
Yeah.
Like, what, did I lose the promise?
Yeah.
Did I lose his favor? And you may be, and I guarantee you someone is listening to this right now, and you know, you may be asking yourself, like, I've had all these promises spoken over me, or, you know, or the whatever, insert whatever, and you may be feeling that same way of like, well, where is it?
Yeah.
Where is it? I've heard it, I've read it, but where is it?
Yeah.
And I just want to encourage you, you know, if you're listening to this and that's you, if you're listening to this and, you know, you're going through a season of waiting and of mourning, like Xiomi was sharing about us and what we're going through, I just want to encourage you. One, obviously you're not alone.
Yeah, for sure.
Everyone is dealing with that. But two, like, I am not going to give you an answer as to when that'll stop. I'm not going to give you an answer as to when that promise will come. I can't give you that. I'm sorry. I wish I could.
Mm-hmm.
But what I can tell you is that God wants to walk that with you.
Yeah.
And he's not only inviting, he's not asking you to invite him, but he's asking you to invite your community in that with you.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's in the power of Xiomi sharing her story and so sharing their story, or you may be listening to this and now maybe you want to share your story.
Yeah.
That is when we get encouraged.
Yeah,
we get encouraged by one another. Yeah. Like, we get encouraged by the stories that we're going through, whether they're great or not. Yeah. You know, it's easy to celebrate when good things are happening. Oh, praise God.
Yeah.
No, we're very big on like, oh, let's share testimonies.
Yeah.
But no, I want to actually push back on that. No, let's share our doubts.
Yeah.
Like, let's share our fears.
I mean, at the end of the day, those are still your testimony.
Yeah, I mean, it is. And I want to actually kind of speak on that real quick, too, because what you said also sparked something, you know, the whole comparison thing. Another thing that it really bothers me too, is when people are like, man, I don't know, like, is my testimony even worth it? Because I never went through anything. And that one's real. Because there's people that, and I've heard it, and I've seen it. People be like, you know, so-and-so's testimony, that was crazy. You know, God liberated from this, that. They set him free from this. I never went through anything like that. Like, is my testimony that powerful too? Like, is it that important? Like, what, you know, and, you know, there's that tension of that.
Sure.
Of comparing, like, your testimony and, like, is it even worth it? Like, is it that big? Like, you know, and I just want to encourage you, like, at the end of the day, it's not about what God saved you from.
Yeah.
It's the fact that God saved you.
Yeah, that's good.
It's literally that simple.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if he saved you from being, you know, this crazy wreck of a mess. Wreck of a mess. Or this, you know, sheltered, nothing really ever went wrong. Like, I had a great family. I had a great, like, it's not about that. The enemy wants you to compare your pain, your testimony.
Yeah.
It's all about comparison. And the moment you do that, you take your eyes off the one that saved you in the first place. You take your eyes off the one that can heal you in the first place, and you start putting your eyes on the issue.
Yeah.
And that robs you of not just joy.
Yeah, for sure.
That robs you of peace.
Yeah.
That robs you of experiencing the fullness of his grace and his mercy, and there's redemption. And I just want to invite y'all into that as we were talking about some of these things, which, again, they're tough, they're hard. And again, to let y'all know, like, we're still going through it.
Yeah.
Like, like, Xiomi did a really good job of explaining. I don't even really know if I have language for it yet because I have so many feelings and thoughts.
Yeah.
Like, and that's where I struggle with Xiomi kind of, you know, talked about it earlier. Like, we haven't really had a conversation like this because I think, one, if we're going to be honest, it's and that's something that I also want to preface here that we do is we sweep things under the carpet and try to forget about them and just be like, all right, it happened and it is what it is, which I think part of it is that. I know for me at least, it's like trying to just forget it and be like, okay, let me move on. That happened. Yeah. But let me try to move on. And really, that's just a trauma response.
That's my frustration.
Yeah.
That I feel like you forgot.
Yeah, and that's a trauma response that I'm realizing that I have is that when things like that happen, I just want to just push past it.
Yeah.
And it's funny. This is, you know, me being a little bit vulnerable here too, but it's like I see this happening like when I was a kid.
Yeah.
In school or whatever, like if I ever tripped on myself or ever like got hurt or whatever, like I got up so fast.
Yeah.
I always got up so fast. Like, Every time I fell, I got hurt, something, I boom, got up. Because I didn't want people to see not only my situation of what I was in or what happened to me, but I didn't want myself to feel the pain. Like, I would try to forget the pain. Like, I could literally break my arm and I would get up and be like, nope, because I didn't want to feel the pain. I didn't want people to see it. And I'm realizing that's a really good illustration of how I deal with my emotions. And maybe that's you. Maybe you're someone that's like that too. Or maybe you're a bleeder. There's someone that, man, you let it out and you're going through it and it's like a slow burn. Or maybe you're, again, like me, that's just, you get hit and boom, you get up. I don't want people to see it. I don't want people, no, yeah. I don't want to talk about it. I'm going to move forward. Now maybe I'll forget it. That carpet is going to get real full one day. You're going to have a lot of dust bunnies coming out of that thing. And it's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
And I think as you were sharing that made me realize, like, wow, like, that's probably why, and the reason as to why I respond that way when it comes to hard situations, specifically this one.
Yeah. Now that you've said that, a lot of things clicked. Yeah. A lot of things made so much sense now.
And what's the power? And I'm glad that you guys are seeing this happen, because this isn't rehearsed.
Now I'm gonna think it was because you said it.
No, because the thing is, like, this isn't rehearsed. This wasn't practice. Like, we are figuring this out in real time, and in a way, again, we don't mind being guinea pigs and throwing ourselves out there and being like, all right.
I really don't care.
We don't really care, but I hope you guys are, as you're hearing this, as we're figuring and talking through this in real time, you can, like, apply this to your life and apply this to your relationships and your friends and your people, and say, like, again, like, we are now getting some new insight as we talk about it, but we had to talk about it.
Yeah.
Like, again, we haven't had this conversation.
Yeah.
We haven't really fully dove deep into that in a minute. So I just kind of want to preface that as we end off. Like, this whole lamenting situation and waiting on a dream, like, it's not easy. And there's really no answer.
For sure.
There really isn't.
Yeah, I think, like, as you're talking and, like, thinking through things, like, I don't know. All I could think of is, like, and this is, like, for me too. So, like, this is me, like, just processing while you're talking and, like, thinking of, like, what do you do when you're waiting? Especially, like, when you're waiting on a promise, when you're waiting on a dream. I think, like, something maybe you and I haven't talked through is, like, and I don't know where this comes from. Maybe there's a scripture somewhere. I'm not that, like, knowledgeable of the scriptures, but, like, surrendering that dream to the Lord and, like, bringing it to Him. I think that has been, like, my biggest struggle with having a kid baby. And as I talked about it, I was like, like, we've been trying this, and I've been investing in things and trying things and doing things, except for surrendering this dream and putting it in the hands of God. And maybe that's my next step. Maybe that's our next step, is, like, you know what? Like, it's clear that in our own strength and in our own doings, like, we're almost a year in and there's still no baby. But I don't think one thing you and I have done is, like, really prayed through that and, like, just giving it to the Lord, and I think of where she's, like, cried for years at the temple because she couldn't have a baby. I'm blanking right now. And then she said, if you give me a baby, I'll surrender it to you.
Well, I was thinking about that. And it's Hannah. I was going to actually bring that up.
But what was the baby?
Hannah and Samuel.
And Samuel.
Yeah.
Well, that's awkward.
Yeah, like, as you started saying that,
that was awkward.
Not
you having the same name.
The first thing in my head, I'm like, you're gonna talk about Hannah and Samuel. Yeah. The consecration of Samuel. That Hannah couldn't bear a child. Yeah. And then she prayed for the Lord.
Yeah.
For a child. And then when Samuel came, the first thing that she did is she consecrated him.
Yeah.
Back to God.
But I also don't want to rush through it and have, like, an Abraham situation either with Ishmael.
Exactly.
I don't want to rush through it because I don't want to make decisions that are going to deter me or keep me from actually having what God has for me.
Yep.
I'm getting sorry now.
But
Like,
that's the
this
tension,
is just like my
But that right there is
my
it.
thoughts.
Yeah.
Because of impatience, because you couldn't just wait a little longer, because you were trying to rush through a process, miss something God had for you, which I've experienced many times in my life, trying to rush through things and then missing out on something that God had for me because my choices and my decisions were not aligned with like what God wanted me to do or had prepared for me had I waited an extra week and sometimes it was almost like an extra just day. I could have waited a day and had something so much better, but in my humanity and desire and like rush, I made a decision that kept me from that. And I think like just now, like thinking about it, like I've never really, I think about it and then I'm like, nah, like not now because I don't want to, but more just like, it just feels like extra.
Yeah.
But I think like now, if I'm trying to think like, that's probably like the best thing you can do is to like give it to the person who has it for you anyway.
Yeah.
And standing on that, and doesn't mean it's not going to be hard or it's not going to suck, but like at least you know that like the person who has it or the God that has it is the one who gave it to you himself. And what better like thing to know.
Yeah. No, I love it you brought that up because the first thing I thought was Hannah and Samuel. I think that's one of the best kind of like images of that, of like the waiting and the difficulty of that. But then of course like what you do with when you do get that promise and the consecration of it. But I love it you said that because again, even also the Abraham, I love that analogy because it's so good. The whole like Isaac and Ishmael and what happens, and we actually talked about this, or maybe I talked about it with someone else, but like the whole I would much rather
it was with me and you. I don't know what we were doing,
but I think I was saying like I'd much rather wait on what God has for me than receive something way sooner that isn't his. Because again, like there's a blessing and then there's a curse, right? There's like in that type of language, of course, not like literally, but there's like that the blessing of the waiting. But the one thing I want to end off with is the scripture and this phrase that I love. And it's found in Genesis. As you were talking, I kind of was wanting to look it up, but it's Genesis 32:22, and it's where Jacob wrestles with God. And I just wanted to like talk about that because again, I think that's all of us. And like the phrase that I got was there's, I don't know if you guys probably have heard of this guy. His name is Jordan Peterson. He's kind of a big deal, especially like around right now. But basically, there's this tour that he's going on, and it's called "Those of Us Who Wrestle with God." And I love that phrase because that is literally all of us.
That's for sure.
All of us. We all wrestle with God to some extent. But that scripture, I think. Let me see. I want to double check, but I believe this is where he actually gets the name Israel. Yep, he does. So it says, "Then the man said," this is the angel of the Lord that is that Jacob is wrestling with, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome." And that is what I want us to land on. And I'm trying not to get too like sermony here, but again, it's like it's because of the struggle and because of the wrestle that his name was changed. His identity changed, and he literally in his name it means overcome. He overcame because he wrestled with God, and he did not give up. By the way, Jacob didn't win.
Loser.
Which is funny. He actually walked out with a limp.
That's true.
And that's what happens. Like we will wrestle with God. We will wrestle with the promise. We will wrestle with the tension. But we'll never beat God. And we'll never be like our problem will never beat God. Our frustration will never beat none of that. He's always going to walk out on top. But in that and in our wrestling, he will then change your name and say, you have overcome.
Yeah.
And in that, that's where the promise comes.
Yeah.
But we have to fight, and we have to wrestle. And again, I don't have an answer. But if I were to give an answer, I would say the only way is to wrestle. Like, the only way to get through the waiting is to wrestle.
Yeah.
It's to fight. And it's to fight, and I guarantee you Jacob wasn't fighting happy. I guarantee you Jacob was trying to beat this guy because he was like, whoa, I just got jumped. Like, this guy's not playing nice. So it's okay to fight, not with like, I'm going to fight on my knees and have faith. We hear that. No, bro, fight crying out. Like, fight angry.
Yeah.
Fight with doubt. Because it's in that fight, in that struggle, where God says, very well,
Yeah.
you have overcome, and I will give you a new name.
Yeah.
So I want us to end with that, and I want the charge and the challenge or whatever, the practical thing that we give out for this episode. It's been a long one. It's been a pretty heavy one, but I think it was needed. But I want us to end off by doing the practice that we did at community night. If you weren't there, go ahead and do it. If you were there, do it again. But write down your lament.
Yeah.
Or laments. Write them all down.
Yeah.
Make them known to God, not because he doesn't know them, but because he wants you to be honest. And then I want to challenge you to have other people pray into that. Like, don't just you pray, yes, but like bring people into that.
Yeah.
And wrestle with God.
Yeah.
And wrestle with others. And then hope, believe, pray, and know that he will answer in due time. And that whatever he has for you, it's going to be worth the wait.
Yeah.
But know that we're here. Yeah. We're in that place with you. And let's just wrestle together, guys.
Yeah.
Let's wrestle together and keep believing. And the last thing I'll say is, this is the last thing I'll say. Never allow anything, any form of, I mean, honestly, I'm just going to say it. Don't ever allow any curse exit your lips towards God.
Yeah.
Only bless his name.
Yeah.
Because that was the literal first thing I did. When we lost our baby, was I said, praise God. Literally.
It really was.
It was
Actually, now that I think of it, it really was.
The first thing was, God gives and he takes away. Nonetheless, blessed be the name of the Lord. That was the first thing I said the moment it happened. And it's this thing I've kept saying this whole time. And I will be honest with you, if it wasn't for that, I don't know, my heart would be where it is now.
Yeah.
So do not ever let any unwholesome thing, any curse, any anger leave your lips towards the Lord. Yeah. Only give him praise. Only bless his name.
Yeah. That's good, babe.
And then just keep going.
Yeah.
All right?
Yep. I'm just laughing because we're just so different. Because you're like, fight, wrestle, and I'm like, surrender. Yeah. Some of us fight to hold on, and some of us fight to let go.
That's the beauty of it.
And you pick which one you're fighting for.
And that's the thing. That's the beauty of it. That's why we're both doing this.
Yep.
If you want to fight, fight. If you want to surrender, surrender. At the end of the day, they're both the same side. They're both two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, for sure.
And sometimes fighting is surrendering, and sometimes surrendering is fighting.
That's what I'm saying.
So, anyway, guys, we love y'all. We hope this was of value to you. Yes, this was a long episode. This was a heavy one, but I just want to thank y'all for listening and making it all the way through. And again, I hope that this was of blessing to you and of value to you.
Yeah.
And share your stories with us.
We're here to listen. We're here to pray for you. Mm-hmm. And whatever y'all need. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. We'll see you in the next one. It'll be better. It'll be a little bit more...
Maybe
a little bit more
lighthearted
or whatever. But anyway, with that,
go have
hit
fun.
Us with the outro.
Have fun. Live your best life.
And get coffee with friends.
Yeah.
Take it easy. Love you guys.